Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Walk a Mile in Her Shoes, and I'm going to be sipping on my vanilla chai tea. And if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. For my paint today, I've got acrylic paint. My colors are titanium white, cobalt blue, burnt umber, which I'll call brown, magenta, Mars black, chrome yellow, and green oxide. And of course you can switch up those colors too if you like, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have a standard number 2 pencil, and I have 2 brushes. I have a 1/2 inch wide flat bristle brush and a number 6 round synthetic brush, and I will refer to these as small and large as we go through the painting process. Of course you can switch those up as well. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that can help you through your painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the large canvas to the same kind of paint and the brushes and all the good stuff in between. So that's there for you. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can just print that and use it as a visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to be doing for the first step is we're going to be painting our sky. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors that I'm using are brown, blue, and white. And I am going to be bringing my sky down, I would say almost 3/4 of the way down my canvas. So to know how far down that is, you can visually just kind of pick a halfway spot and then go about halfway between there and the bottom of your canvas and make yourself a little bit of a mark. So I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of blue, make myself a little bit of a mark there. Then I can use my brush as a measuring tool and go to the other side and mark it just about at the same height. It doesn't have to be exactly where mine is, but somewhere in that vicinity will work out well. My sky I'm going to be doing in a very loose, impressionistic type of style. I just put some blue and white on my brush, and I'm just going to kind of be doing almost these, you could do circles, you could do X's, you can do really whatever kind of short mark making brush stroke works for you. I'm using quite a bit of paint. I want this to just kind of look like it's clouds floating by. I'm going to use a little bit of brown every now and again. I just picked up a bit of brown on my brush. This will give me some good different tones throughout my sky. I'm going to attempt to get it lighter and lighter as I go down towards the horizon, or at least have a nice light spot as I reach the horizon line where it's going to meet my land. But as I'm going through this, again, I'm just kind of using these really quick gestural type of brush strokes. You can have darker areas, like I just picked up a bit more blue on my brush in through there, and I'm really just using a consistent brush stroke. So if you choose to do X's, do them throughout the entire painting. If you choose to do these like semicircle kind of C marks like I'm doing, I'm going to do that throughout the entire area. I am using a good amount of paint throughout this process, so this way it's almost like an impasto type of style where you can almost see the texture in that paint. You could certainly have a nice smooth background if you wanted to, but I'm going for this really fun, you know, exciting type of atmosphere to it, so that's why I'm using this nice impressionistic style of brushstroke. So it's really fun. It allows you to explore different styles of how to get that paint on there. I use a dotting technique a lot of the time too, but this particular painting, I thought it'd be fun to add this additional way of applying the paint. And then once I've gotten all the way down to the bottom, or down to where I want my my horizon line to be, I will be utilizing this brush for the next step, but I am going to want to wash it and dry it. And of course you can keep playing with this all you want. If you want more areas to have, you know, the appearance of clouds floating by, you can certainly work on that. Or if you want it smoother, you can work on that. But I think this is going to do it for me. So I am going to wash and dry my large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what I'm going to be doing for the next step is I'm painting my pavement, or my path, or my road, or whatever you'd like, my sidewalk, whatever you'd like to call it. The part that the shoes are walking on, that's what we're doing. I'm going to use my large bristle brush. The colors I'm using are white, brown, and black. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to give myself a couple of markers, and then we'll connect those markers and we'll have ourselves some sort of ground area that she can walk on, or the shoes can walk on. So I'm going to put a little bit of brown and white on my brush at the same time. I don't need much. I'm going to make myself a mark at my horizon line that is, I would say, if this is about halfway into the center of your canvas, I'm about 3 or 4 inches, or maybe 2.5, 3 inches to the left of that. Somewhere in this vicinity is where I'm putting this marker. The next one is going to be down in the bottom left-hand corner, somewhere in through here. And then the one on the right is going to be up this right side, maybe about 2 inches in through here. I'm going to connect these with a little bit of an arcing line. It doesn't have to be really a perfectly arced line. This one in through here is going to be mostly covered by the big shoe, but I do like to have a little bit of motion on it. And then this one in through here, I'm going to just connect this with an arcing line like this. And then I'm going to be coloring this in with a series of stripes. So I want there to appear as though it's going off into the distance. So by using, I'm picking up white right now just to kind of get a little bit of that brown off of my brush. I just picked up brown as well. So I'm going to alternate brown, black, and white on this, but I wanted to kind of get the information out there that I'm doing it in like a striped type of brush stroke. So it will give the implication or the idea that it is wider here and it's going to get more narrow at the base and through there. So I'm picking up a little bit of brown, black, and white. You can get it a little bit darker as it is towards the bottom of your canvas, but I'm getting all of my stripes to kind of converge into that center area at the top. You don't need it to go super duper dark, so you can kind of modify these colors or get them a little bit lighter or darker to your own visual preference. But if you can get it lighter up at the top, a little bit lighter up at the top and a little bit darker down at the bottom, that's going to give you the information that maybe the sunlight is off in the distance. Maybe this area that we're viewing down here might be in a little bit darker of an area of the garden or wherever she is walking from. So you can really just steer the viewer's attention to or idea by just kind of shifting the colors a little bit. And we are going to be having a whole bunch of flowers and all kinds of other information on this particular pathway, so, or on the edges of it. So if yours doesn't end up perfect, don't worry about it. I am kind of blending these in a little bit so it's not too line, too many distinct lines on it. So I'm blending it just a little bit, but giving you that hint of the direction of that, of the movement of it as well. And then we are going to be utilizing this same, we're going to utilize this same brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can just wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we're drawing an outline of our shoes and our feet. I realize that I told you on the last step that we were gonna be using our bristle brush or the large brush for the next step, but I changed my mind. So we're gonna use our pencil for the next step because you can't draw with a big brush, or at least not these little lines. I do also wanna forewarn you that you wanna make sure that your canvas is dry before you do this step. It is a lot easier to draw on dry paint than it is on wet paint. So, you know, you can take that extra long break if you'd like to. Or you can find some kind of fun fanning method, or you can do as I did and just whip out your blow dryer and get it dry that way. So whatever way works for you. I'm going to give you a couple of markers. We're going to connect those markers, and hopefully by the time we're done, we'll have something that looks like a pair of high-heeled shoes. You can certainly model yours after whatever kind of shoes that you'd like, but we're going for some high-heel shoes on my canvas. So I'm going to come down to the bottom of my canvas. I'm going to come in from the right-hand side about 1.5 to 2 inches. I'm up from the bottom a little bit more than an inch, maybe like 1.25 inches. I'm going to make myself a little bit of a marker. I might actually, in this dark section, I'm going to use some white chalk so you can see my markers a little bit better in the dark area. Then I'm going to come over quite a few inches. If this is about halfway in the center of my canvas, I'm over to the right from that about 2 inches. So I'm making myself a mark there. And then I'm going to just connect these two markers. So you'll have yourself a little bit of a straight line down at the bottom. And then what I'm going to do on the right hand side, I'm going to give myself a curved line, something like that. That's going to represent the side of the foot. And then on this left side, this is going to represent the toe area. So I'm going to do a similar kind of arc, but when I bring it up, it's a little bit pointier over on this side, not by much, just a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come about between these two, I'm about 1/3 of the way over from the left-hand side, and then I'm going to go straight up from there. Up, 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 until I'm about 1 inch, 1.5 inches away from the top of my canvas. Make myself a little bit of a marker. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect this marker to this curve, and this marker to this curve. This is going to represent the outside silhouette of the shoe. This is where it meets the person's ankle. So you're going to have the heel part in through here, or where the heel of the foot is, and then it kind of rides down like this, and then it's going to bump out just a little bit down at the bottom. So here we go. I'm going to have mine a little bit on the pointier side up at the top where it meets the ankle, something like that. And then I'm always going to have my eye on the prize, which is this marker down in through here. So I'm going to just kind of get this to gradually meet each other. I'm going to have this kind of bumping out like this. This is almost going to be a dead drop, kind of think of it like a roller coaster. You kind of go, and then you have that dead drop going down pretty darn far, and then it's going to kind of level off and meet in with this curve a little bit. So it doesn't have much of movement on that side, and then same thing with here. I'm going to put where the heel of your foot is going to go, and then it's going to be a pretty dead drop for quite a while in through here, and then it's going to meet this little curve in through here. So this right side doesn't have as much movement to it as the left side. The left side is kind of a little bit more because this is going to represent the toe portion of it. And then once I have that, then I have to actually put the heel on it. So I come down maybe about 2 or 3 inches in through here. I'm going to give myself a curved line. There's going to be just a sliver of the outside of the shoe showing on this right hand side. So I'm going to just kind of bring this down. I would say about 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch away from that colored part, or from the edge part. And then as I come down in through here, this is going to meet this curve like this. So something like this, because we're in essence making the bottom of the shoe and the heel all at once here. On this left side, I'm going to have a little bit more of the exterior color of the shoe showing, and it's going to meet down in through here. So here we go. I'm going to kind of ride this down like this. It's going to get a little bit wider as it comes down towards the foot part, the bottom part of the foot in through here. And then I'm going to meet it with this bottom edge in through here. And of course, you can certainly modify yours all you want. Once I've got that, that's the underside of the shoe. Now I'm going to put the heel on. So I'm going to come down these two sides to about here. I'm going to bring this in like this. I'm going to bring this in like this. I'm going to decide where I want the end of that spiked heel to go. For me, I'm going to have it end right about here. I'm going to give you some chalk marks so you can see it. Somewhere right about there. And I'm going to make this meet with here and this meet with here. So we have the underside of the shoe, the heel, and the exterior colored part of the shoe. Now I'm going to put my ankle on. So I'm going to come a little bit in from here and straight up to the top, right about here. I'm going to give myself a little bit of ankle in through here, like that. And then on the left-hand side, my ankle is going to start right about here, which is about even with here, maybe a little bit to the left. And we need to see a little side of the foot. So I'm going to have this side of the foot end about halfway up your heel. So about right about here is kind of where I have this going. And you're just going to see a little tiny sliver. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in like this up at the top. I'm going to put what would be kind of her ankle bone or her, I think it's the ankle bone, something like this. It's going to ride in a similar curve along the side here. And then I'll just get it to meet in with the shoe right about here. So something like that. And then I've got a little bit of another foot, the front foot that's going to be in through here. So I'm going to have this one coming, I would say, come right about here. Give yourself a horizontal line somewhere in here. Going to give myself a little bit of a curve where the toe is going to go. This is going to curve right up in through here. This is going to be a similar curve to this one right in through here. And then I'm going to meet this. This is in essence the exterior of the shoe, like this one. I'm going to meet this up just a little bit lower than where you have here. So maybe somewhere right about here is where I'm going to have this portion end. And we're seeing a little bit more of the side of the shoe, so we might see a little bit more curve to it. So I'm going to go something like this and then just meet this in through here. I need to put a little bit of the underside of the shoe. So I'm going to just give myself a little bit of a sliver like this, come about halfway between here, and give myself the inside or the bottom side of the shoe, where it would be the back side or something. And then I need a little ankle type foot area. So I'm going to go about this wide. So it's almost as wide as this one, right about here. So if this is the tip of your toe, if you come straight up from the tip of your toe, I'm right about there. That's how far out I have that ankle. And then I'm going to have it meet maybe about 2 inches down this shoe. So somewhere right about here. And I'm just going to give myself a little bit of a curvy kind of ankle area, something like this. Not too curvy, but a little. Has a little bit of movement to it. And then that's all I'm going to do for the outline. You can certainly sit and do any little adjusting that you need to. And then we are definitely going to use our large brush for the next step. So you can just put your pencil away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting our distant garden, is what I'm going to call it. So this is going to be all the flowers and foliage that are going to be off in the distance that she is walking towards. So I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors that I'm using are green, brown, yellow, white, and pink. So the only colors I'm not using are black and blue. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to have it kind of bright on the edges and maybe a little bit looking like it's closer to us. And then as it goes far off into the distance, it's going to be very, very faint or light in color. So what I'm going to first do is I'm going to start with a bit of brown and green on my brush at the same time. And I'm just going to kind of lay in the foundation as to the darkest areas. So for the most part during this process, I'm going to be using a dotting type of brush stroke. If I choose to use any other type of brush stroke throughout the process, I will let you know. When I get to where it's going to meet the road itself, I'm going to probably just use a little bit more left to right, so that way I don't get too much of the foliage on top of the road itself. I'm going to do this darker color in the bottom left and right corner. So a little bit of green and brown is where I'm starting, just bringing it right to the edge of the road. If when you're near the feet, you bump into them a little bit, don't worry about that, because you're going to be doing a lot more detail on those shoes. So you don't have to worry about getting them to being too careful around them. As I travel up and in, I'm going to start utilizing, right now I'm going to pick up white and a little bit of green, so I can get this to be a little bit lighter as it's coming up into what's going to be the soft out of focus area of these flowers. I'm bringing this up just a little bit. Whatever I do on the left, I'm going to do a little bit of that on the right as well. So again, I'm just kind of using a dotting type of motion. Now I'm going to pick up a little bit of brown and white, and it's more white than it is brown. This is where I'm going to, in essence, kind of lay out the rest of the area where I want the flowers to go, and then I'll add some bright, colorful areas on top. I'm going to actually bring this footprint about halfway between the top of my canvas and my road, so maybe maybe a little bit higher than that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep kind of picking up my brown and white, maybe a little bit more white than brown, to get this footprint of the area that I want all of these flowers to go in. This brown and white is going to act as a beautiful neutral base to the colorful pieces that I'm going to put on in a minute. I'm bringing this all the way to the edge of, or to the end of the pathway, so it looks like it just kind of goes off into the distance, and we just kind of disappears and allows our beautiful feet to just kind of walk off into the distance and into out of focus type of land. And then now that I've got kind of the area in which I want, maybe I want this a little bit higher. Once I've got that area in which I want them, now I'm just going to add some beautiful flowers on top of it. So I'm not going to wash my brush. My flowers are going to be made up mostly of yellow and pink and white. You could certainly make yours into whatever color you want. You could even pre-mix these two and make a peach. You could really do anything super fun. I just picked up yellow and white, and I'm going to add, just as if these are being illuminated by the beautiful sunshine throughout the day. I'm referring to this painting as an impressionistic style painting. So I am not going for any one specific style of flower, but if you wanted to, put some distinct daisies or something, or whatever style of flower that you think might complement this, you could certainly put more detail in yours than I am. Now I'm not washing my brush. I'm just going to pick up some pink and white and give the illusion of some beautiful pink flowers. So this color I'm using because it's going to complement my shoes. It's really just the same color as my shoes are. So I'm putting a little bit on here, and I'm finding that I feel like I have too much yellow still left on my brush. So I think I'm actually going to wash and dry my brush. So I don't want my colors to look too muted, so I'm actually washing and drying my brush so I can pick up some of that pink all by itself, because I want that pink to really be representational of what the shoes are going to be. So I just picked up a little bit more pink. Yeah, there we go. And I don't necessarily need to go too far over into this left-hand side. I don't need it all to occupy this, because we're going to have some foreground bushes that will add some information around there as well. But right now, just kind of putting some of this pink on here in some nice areas. I'm going to pick up a little bit of white in a second as well, so I can get some highlights to these flowers. I just picked up some white to give myself some really soft looking pink in throughout here. And of course, you could get really as bold as you want. You could have yours as subtle as you want. I'm just looking to give mine a nice soft look to it and have these colors complementary to the shoes that are going to be on here. So you can certainly feel free to add or subtract any colors as you see fit. Maybe a little more yellow. See, this is where I'm going to be like, well, I think I'm just going to add a little bit more here and a little bit more there. But again, you feel free to make yours as luminescent or as subtle as you want to. And then once you've got all of your beautiful flower garden in the distance, you can wash. Oh, actually, what brush are we going to use for the next step? We're going to use our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put the large brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting the first layer of our shoes. So I'm going to use my medium brush. The colors I'm using are pink, white, and black. And how I'm going to do this is I am going to be making a darker shade of my pink and a little bit lighter shade than this. So I'm going to take my pink, some of my pink or my magenta, and add a touch of black into it. This is going to be the color that is underneath or on the sole of the shoe. I do know that this will get a little bit darker as it dries, but I'm going to just kind of eyeball this into like a dark purple color. And then once I've got the desired shade that I want, so this is about where I'm going with mine, I'm going to color in the underneath or the soles of the shoe. So I've just got this area in through here. And again, don't worry if it's not perfect, because we're going to be doing a second coat in a little while, which will add dimension to this section of the shoe. But right now we just want to get this base coat on here. So it may end up a little bit streaky and not awesome looking at this point, but again, we're just looking to get that color on there. And then once I get this, the sole of the shoe on here, then what I'll do is I'm going to make a little bit lighter of a version, or use my pink with a touch of white in it, so that my pink, I'm going to just keep calling it pink, it's magenta, which I guess is a form of pink. I will do that for the main area of the shoe. So I'm just kind of getting this on here. I am, when I'm doing this bottom sole part, I'm bringing it, of course, all the way to my marking, but on the bottom, you can bring it to the left of that to represent a little bit of the bottom of the sole, or where the exterior part is. That's going to give the viewer almost more of a look of the underneath of the shoe, making it look like the foot is more in motion. We have the heel right here is off the ground a little bit, so that's going to imply that this foot is in motion and is lifted off of the ground a little bit. So by adding that extra bit of a view of the bottom of the shoe as well, that's going to enhance that appearance as well. So once I've got that area in there, you could wash your brush if you wanted to, but I'm just going to take my dirty brush and add a touch of white to my magenta. So this is going to give me a lighter version of that magenta, and this is going to be the base coat that I use for the shoe. The reason why I'm using a little bit of white is because I want it to have some good opacity to it, which means you're not going to be able to see through it as well. I know that I want this color of my shoe to be light and bright and have a lot of liveliness to it. So adding that bit of white into it is going to allow it to be less see-through, and it will allow it, when I do that second coat or the final coat on it, to have a good vibrancy to it. So I'm just painting in the main, or the colored part of the shoe, the front part of the shoe, with this lighter version of magenta, just kind of slowing down a bit so I can get the edges of my shoe all the way to my markers, my pencil mark, and then just getting this fully colored in here. So because we are using acrylic paint tends to be on the translucent side, especially mine, because I'm using a student grade paint. So I will be able to see my pencil marks through my paint on this first layer, which is to my benefit when I get into this part in through here. You may not be able to, depending on the type of paint that you're using, you may not be able to see through your paint and see that pencil mark through it like I do. And in which case you could always either leave a little bit of a space between those marks, or you could paint that mark. Oh, I just painted her skin. You get to see a mistake being cleaned up as we speak. I just painted her skin into here. So I'm using a firm brush and a little bit of water to get this paint off of here. That's what happens when you're talking too much. Sometimes my brush wants to do what it wants to do. So just getting this paint out of here. So once you, I got to regain my thought here. So the your pencil marks should help you to not do that, to not paint over it. But I guess mine made me, I just wanted to paint over it, I guess. So anyways, so the outside of your shoe should only go to here. You can see your pencil mark underneath. If you can't see your pencil mark underneath for guidance, then you could draw a darker line, either with a darker color paint as the guide below, or you can leave a little space between your line, which for me is the pencil, and your paint, because we're going to be, wherever that line is right now, we're going to be adding more detail to it. Like you're going to add skin for this one, or you're going to add a shadow where the heel meets the main shoe portion. Now I've got to really concentrate. I'm like, oh my God, am I going in the right lines or not? But so again, if you can see your pencil underneath, great. If not, and if you still need that guide, especially right in through here, you can certainly either darken that original line, or you can leave a little space between that line and the paint that's next to it until you get into the highlights and the shadows and that second layer whereby at that point you'll be able to paint right into it. And then once you get your shoes colored in, and made any corrections if you need to, because if you were following me, you might have made a mistake. Once you've got that done, we are going to be utilizing this same brush for the next step. So you'll want to wash it and dry it. And as I get down to this little edge in through here, just making sure I get all the way to where I want to go here. And if you have, little pencil marks, like I have a little bit of a chalk mark in through here, I'll either bring that paint all the way to the edge or erase that, whatever makes the most sense to me. And then I'll wash and dry my medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we're painting the base coat of the skin. I'm gonna be using my medium brush. The colors that I'm using are magenta, yellow, brown, and white. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-mix myself a skin color. So I've magically done that off air, so it's ready so you can see it now, but I'll show you how I got there. So I'm going to be using a little bit of my magenta, a little bit of my brown, almost equal parts of these three colors, and then and equal parts of white, and just mix it all together. It's probably not going to be the perfect color coming out of the gate. Mine looks like it's a little bit yellow and it's a little bit dark. So I'm going to add a little bit more pink to it and a little bit more white to it. And I just keep adjusting it slowly until I get it into a color that I like. So for me, when I'm doing, this is still a little dark for me. I think the yellow side is good, so I'm just going to add a touch more white. When I'm doing a base coat for skin, a lot of times my default is my own skin as reference. So what I'll do is, as I'm doing this, is I will take my brush and bring it right up to my skin. And I say, oh, is that too light? Is it too dark? Is it too yellow? Is it too brown? Is it too pink? And then I can just adjust it from there. So this is looking pretty good to me, maybe a little bit more richer on the color. And then once I get it into the color that I want, I'm just gonna blend these guys together so I've got plenty to work from. Once I've got the color that I want, I do know that it will turn out a little bit darker as it dries, so I also kind of plan for that as well. And then once I've got that color that I want, I'm coloring this right leg first. And again, I'm not terribly concerned about perfect coverage on this first coat. I'm just bringing it right to my pencil mark and right to my shoe, not doing any special brush stroke except for painting it on. It doesn't have to be, or painting it on top of my shoe. Maybe I should go a little slower sometimes. Getting it in this little area in through here. And then once I've got this right foot, what I will end up doing is I'm going to do a little bit darker of a color for the other foot to imply that the other foot is kind of in the shadow, or the other leg is a little bit being shadowed by this one that we're doing right now. That'll give it good dimension. It'll allow the viewer to understand that one leg is in front of the other one. So now that I've got this one colored in, all I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of this and add a touch of brown to it. So I'm making it into a slightly darker shade of skin. So it doesn't have to be much darker, just a little bit darker. So again, it will give the viewer the information that one of these legs is in front of the other. And when we go to do our final details on the skin or on the legs, we will amplify that message by doing the highlights and maybe some deeper shadows, which will allow one leg to look like it's, you know, much more in front of the other one. And then we are going to be utilizing our large brush for the next step. So once you've got this layer of your skin on here, you can put your small brush away, take out, I might have called this our medium brush at one point, but we only have two brushes, so it's definitely our small brush. So once you get done this step, you can put this small brush away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are going to be painting our foreground bushes or foliage, whatever you'd like to refer to them as. These are going to be the bushes that represent the area where the shoes are. So really close to us, like she's walking through the garden and she's walking through maybe some taller shrubs that are on the side. I'm going to be using my large brush. The colors I'm using are black, brown, green, yellow, and white. So I really want these to look darker than the garden that's off in the distance. I'm going to be using that dotting type of stippling technique. I'm going to have them really dark down at the bottom. I'm not going to do a whole lot on this right side, maybe just a little bit in through here, maybe a couple pieces up and through here, but this left side is really going to have a big area over, kind of encapsulating this area over here. So I'm going to start with some green and black on my brush at the same time. I'm going to start down in this bottom left-hand corner. I don't want to get rid of all of the detail that we've already put on there, but I definitely want to represent that, you know, she's walking through some foliage. So I wanted to kind of overlap into my area, my road a little bit. I'm going to put a little bit of this darker color down in through here to maybe imply that there's some closer ones here. It's the only time I'm going to pick up black. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to start picking up some green and brown. I did not wash my brush, so this way these colors will really start to talk to one another. They'll overlap one another. The black will act as shadows. The green and the brown are going to act as just transitional colors as we're working our way towards that brighter stuff. And based on where our viewpoint is, a lot of this greenery would almost look like it's silhouetted because our focal point and our light source is off in the distance somewhere. So these are really just kind of, you know, we might be seeing them in their shadows, you know, so I'm using these darker colors as that shadowy kind of base for these close-up bushes or, you know, shrubs. I'm going to put some all the way up in through here, maybe kind of leaning over this edge a bit, just kind of showing, maybe this is a short tree or something over here on the left-hand side. So that's kind of how I'm going to start that. Now what I'm going to do, without washing my brush, I'm going to be picking up green and yellow. So I'm progressively getting lighter and lighter as I'm going towards the edges of this of these bushes of sorts that are in through here. And I don't necessarily want to overtake, again, that garden type of area, but I do want to give the information or the idea that there is this extra bit of, you know, something that that she's walking through. This is adding that dimensional element to the painting for us by just allowing us to see this darker, closer area. And now what I'm going to do, I think I've got some good area of that in through there. I'm going to start adding some yellow and white to my brush. So this is going to add those little bits of highlights to the tips of this bush, so it implies that it is getting kissed by whatever that light is off in the distance, that light source. And of course you could make these as bright as you want or as subtle as you want, but just giving them that bit of highlight on the edges is really going to bring it to life. And again, this is kind of an impressionistic style painting, so lots of dots and stuff will make the painting come to life. This is just adding those little shimmers of light throughout it. And then once you've got it as bright as you want or as energetic as you want, we are going to be going back to our small brush for the next step. So you can just put the large brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to put the shadow underneath our shoes on the ground. So I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors I'm using are black and brown. And how I'm going to do this, I'm going to have this shoe on the ground, so I'm going to have a real dark, dark shadow right underneath it. And then this shoe is going to be lifted off of the ground a little bit. So I'll have a dark shadow underneath it, but it's going to be a little bit away. I'm going to load my brush with black and brown at the same time. What I'm going to first do is just kind of draw myself a nice dark outline right underneath the shoe. You don't have to bring it up the side of the shoe a little bit. The way to make it look a little bit more natural is just pull it out of the bottom of that shoe a little bit, and then the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to bring it out, but as soon as that shoe starts to curve, that's when I'm going to bring start bringing that shadow away from the shoe a little bit. That's where you're going to get it to look, to emulate the shape of the shoe and make it look a little bit more natural. And then what I'm going to do, get my easel out of the way, I'm going to just be doing a left to right brush stroke. I don't want necessarily a solid kind of line. So I suppose you could have it really a solid black or a solid brown to add the shadow, but I want it to look like it's taking on a little of the grit from the surface that it's walking on. So I'm just going to, in essence, kind of rub my brush to allow for some light spots and some dark spots throughout this shadowy area. But I definitely want that shadow to be nice and dark as it meets the shoe itself. So if you have to, just bring back or add a little bit more black where it actually meets the foot itself, and that's going to give you the illusion that would work well. You could make the shadow, really, you don't have much space to go with the shadow, so it doesn't have to be of any specific shape. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the other foot, but I'm going to put that shadow, I would say like about 1/4 of an inch away from the bottom of your shoe. So I'm just going to go a little bit slower right now to make sure that I've got my area where I want it to be, and then I'm going to bring it out just past that curve part, and then that's when it's going to start to just kind of dissipate back in. We don't have far to go. This is just a little bit of a shadow that's going to come just down, maybe, I don't know, maybe about 1/2 of an inch to an inch down this shoe here, and then just a little a little rubbed in dark area. Again, it doesn't have to be a whole heck of a lot. You're just giving the information that this is in fact the shadow from that shoe above. And then just kind of put my head back to make sure it looks right to me. Don't bump into that shoe over there. And then we're going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your shadows on the ground, you can wash and dry your small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are going to finish our shoes. So I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors I'm using are black, my dark pink, white, and maybe magenta. So, and my light pink too. I'll call them out as I use them. I'm going to start at the underneath side of the shoes, and then I will work my way to the exterior. I'm going to start on the underside, which is going to be with black for my shadow. I'm going to put a really big shadow underneath here, like this. I'm just using just black paint at the moment. Bring it up into this little crevice in through here. And then once I've got it down, as far as I think I want that really dark black to go, I'm picking up some of my dark magenta that we made for the sole of the shoe. And then I'm going to get these two to blend in, and it's gradually going to get into this color by the time we get down to the bottom. So it starts out pretty darn dark up here at the top because I'm using black with the magenta or the dark magenta, and every time I reload my brush, I'm reloading it with just that dark magenta that we made earlier. So what's happening is, again, it will get lighter and lighter, or more of that original color by the time we get down to the bottom. And so again, I'm just continuing to pick up that dark magenta as I'm making my way down towards the bottom. So that black that I had on my brush originally is just kind of working its way off of my brush as we're making our way down to the bottom. And as I get down towards the bottom, and depending on your paint, again, you might find that you want to do another layer on top of this. You know, let it dry, and if you feel that it needs more, you know, another layer, if you can still see through it or whatever, you can certainly go ahead and do that. But I'm bringing it all the way down to the bottom of the shoe. And you could even, if you wanted to add some extra dimensional element to it, you could even make the bottom of the shoe a little bit darker. I just picked up a touch more black on my brush to get this a little bit darker as it curls under the bottom of the foot. So that would be a personal preference on your part. If you felt that you could get away with making it a little bit darker without going black, then you could certainly do that. Then I'm going to move on to the other inside of the shoe. Not a lot of black on my brush, just a teeny tiny bit of black on my brush. I'm going to do the dark part on this inside as it is going behind the other shoe. And then without washing my brush, I'm just going to pick up that dark magenta color to get it to blend into the rest of the sole of that shoe. And then I'm bringing it all the way down to this bottom area. And then again, if I felt I could get away with it, I can bring a little bit of black onto the bottom. This one would be easier to get away with, this little bit of black at the bottom, because it is disconnected from that shadow a bit, which would allow you to not run the risk of connecting them together. And then I'm going to wash and dry my brush. And I'm going to put a little heel part on here, but I'm going to wait to do that until I've got this other main area done. So this is going to be, in essence, kind of utilizing the color that you created for the base color for the shoe, plus white, which will give us some highlights. And you could use the original magenta as like a shadow area. Oh, I didn't say you could use brown. You could use brown too as a shadowy area. So the only like shadow kind of areas on these could be in through here where the heel meets the regular shoe, and maybe a little bit on this bottom side as it's kind of curving towards the sole of the foot. So I'm going to start with some of my regular magenta and just kind of tell myself where I want these darker areas to be. So that's going to be in this area in through here. And again, I'm not terribly concerned about doing a perfect line of sorts. This kind of loose brush stroke that I'm using is allowing me to kind of blend these colors on the fly, which works out just nicely for me. I can get them to go lighter and darker with these nice long kind of loose strokes to them. So that would be the darker area on this shoe, would be where it meets the sole part as well as in through here. And then on this shoe in through here, maybe a little bit on this edge and down where it meets, again, the sole. If you wanted to use a little bit of brown, you certainly could. I'm going to put a little bit of the darkness in through here. And then the main area of the shoe, I'm just going to use my original color that I created for that shoe. So for me, it was my magenta with a little bit of white in it. So this just created a lighter version of my magenta. So I'm just kind of adding a second coat of that to my main area to make sure that the whole thing is colored in. And in a second, I will add a little bit of a highlight to it as well. So you might find as you're doing this, you're like, oh, I think there should be a shadow here, or I think there should be more lightness or darkness here. So you can certainly modify where those light areas or dark areas are. If you want your shoe to look a little bit more weathered and have more wrinkles and stuff in it, you could certainly add, you know, darker areas, especially around this area in through here, the toe area. You could certainly have a couple of wrinkles in through there that would indicate that this shoe has been worn a couple times before and has some, you know, some natural wrinkles from where your foot has created them. But we're just going to kind of go for a nice, maybe uniform look in through here. And again, I'm just utilizing my original base coat that I created to make sure that I have the whole thing colored in. I'm going to do the same thing on the left shoe. So this again was the pre-mixed lighter version of magenta that I used, and then I will add a little bit of a highlight to indicate the form or the shape of the shoe, especially up and through here and on the heel part. What I'm going to do right now, I just wiped my brush off on my paper towel. I'm letting that base coat dry for a second. I just added a bit of black onto my brush to put this little heel part down in through here. Give myself the, I don't even know what this is called. You'd think, I used to actually wear high heels at one time in my life. You'd think I would know what this little part is. The heel protector, perhaps? So I just did black. I just picked up a little bit of white to add a touch of a highlight onto here. That's all I'm going to do for that part. I'm washing and drying my brush, and I'm going to add some light highlights onto the shoe. So I'm adding some white to my brush right now, and for me, my highlight would be in through here where you have the back part of your heel, your actual foot in through here. So I'm adding that bit of lightness, which is going to make that part of the shoe pop out. I could have a little bit in through here as well. This is going to indicate that that part of the shoe pops out a little bit. You don't have to bring it all the way to the edge. You can just kind of add a bit of a highlight in through here, which is going to indicate that the foot pops out a little bit more in that area. So you can steer the viewer again to seeing the shape of the foot by adding these highlights and stuff. So I'm going to add a little bit in through here as well. So I add my white and then just kind of get it to blend in with that neighboring color. Again, that could be whatever color you have chosen to make your shoe. Maybe you want some beautiful red high heel shoes or purple shoes or whatever kind of floats your boat. And then I'm just going to make sure that this blends in up in through this area. And if you're working on this and you're like, oh, well, that my color underneath is still kind of wet and it's difficult to get these colors to blend, you can certainly let them dry in between the layers, and that sometimes will help you to build these bright spots or these highlights. I'm going to put a bit of a highlight in through here as well. And again, I just added a little bit of white and then I just blend it in with that neighboring area. And if you wanted your shadowy area between those, between like this section and that section to be more dramatic, you could certainly add a little bit of brown to that area to make it a little bit darker. I think I'm going to put a little highlight down the actual heel portion itself here. So just a little white streak down there and just get it to blend in with those neighboring color. If I needed to, I'm gonna actually pick up a little bit of my original magenta to get this to blend in so it's not too much of a straight line in through there, and that will help me to show the viewer that this little section pops out a little bit, that it has a little bit more shape to it as well. And then the other foot, I'm just going to add, just getting rid of my little white area in through here. And of course you could certainly, you know, just keep fiddling and tweaking these little shaded areas as much as you feel that you need to. On this shoe right here, I'm just going to add a little bit of the highlight in through here and maybe down this side a bit to show that it sticks out just a little bit, but it doesn't have to stick out too much, but enough to give that foot a little bit of shape to it. So it's not just flat against the canvas. And then we are going to be utilizing this same brush for the next step, so you can just kind of fiddle with your highlights and the color of your shoe, and then you can just wash and dry this medium brush or small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're finishing our legs / side of feet. So finish the skin. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors that I'm using are the skin color that we created, the lighter one, brown, and white. So what I'm going to in essence do is do a second layer on the skin. I might use I don't know if I'm going to use some of that dark brown. We'll see. I'm going to in essence do a second layer on the skin, adding highlight, which for me, I'm going to have a highlight on this area in through here, and a highlight right in through this side over here, and then a shadow. I'm going to have a shadow in through here and maybe a shadow right by where the foot meets the shoe. So I am going to start, let's see, where am I going to start? I'm going to start with a little bit of brown on my brush. I'm going to do this foot first, and I'm going to do a little bit of a shadow where the shoe meets the foot. So I'm just kind of rubbing in a little bit of the brown right in that area. Because I know that my brown is nice and see-through, I can get away with just kind of putting it on here and just rubbing it in. I know that it is already pretty translucent, so it's going to provide me with a nice little shadow on the skin. If your brown is thicker than mine, you might want to use this with your skin color on your brush at the same time, so you'll have to make that judgment call on your part. And then what I'm going to do is I'm picking up some of that original skin color to make sure that I have a good second coat on the entire area. So just getting that to blend in with the shadow as well as the first coat that we did on the skin. So something like this, making sure that I bring it all the way to my pencil mark or over my pencil mark like I just did. So this is the time when you do all those little touch-ups to the skin, making sure that I've got it coming down in through this area, in through here. So again, right now I'm just using that original skin color, and I'm doing a second layer of it to make sure that I've got a full coat, and bringing it right down and making sure I'm cleaning up my edges as I go along, making sure it's got good coverage. And if I needed to add or, you know, correct any areas, I would. And then I'm going to wipe my brush off on my paper towel and put a little highlight where the, I think this is the back of the, I don't know the technical term, the back of the shin, the back of the ankle where it meets the foot. And then I'm going to just add a little bit of white in through this area. I'm going to wipe my brush off on my paper towel and get this white to blend in with the neighboring color. So that's where I want the lightest area to be, is right there in the center where it's meeting the shoe up at the top. And if you wanted to, you could certainly add little highlights elsewhere, but I'm going to move on to this foot here. So I just wiped my brush off on my paper towel, picked up some brown to get my shadowy area right where it's meeting the first or the right foot. So again, just brown on my brush right now, putting this little bit of a shadow area in through here where the two legs meet. So something like this. And I'm just kind of pushing that brown paint right into that little crevice so it almost looks like it's blending in with the original skin color for this particular leg, and then just getting this to go right down in through that shoe area a little bit. So for me on this leg, even though I had made a darker skin color for the first go around, you could use that color as well, but I'm going to attempt to use this color on top of that color so they really tie together. If it ends up too light for me, then I will bring back some of that original skin tone, but I know, again, my paint is see-through, so I can utilize a thin layer of that right leg color on top of that shadowed color that we made earlier, and it's going to tie them together. So if you're going about this and they look too disconnected, or they don't look like they are from the same body because the colors are too off from one another, then an easy way to tie them together is to add another layer of either add a layer of this to that leg or add a layer of this to that leg, and that's going to tie those colors together. I do want a highlight on this foot or this leg over here on the left, so without washing my brush, I'm picking up a little bit of white paint and I'm going to add that highlight over here on the left hand side. So I still want this leg to look like it's really being shadowed by this one. However, I know that it's in front of this leg, so I would naturally have a highlight on that left edge to it, in my head anyways. So that's where I'm putting a little bit of a highlight. So you can certainly, modify this all that you would like. And we have one more little step to go. So once you've got your skin all nice and on here, we're going to be using this small brush for the next step. So you can just wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I usually sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I think I'm going bottom left on this one. I'm going to do my small brush with black paint. I sign mine with, I'm going to just hide it in my shrubs here, but you can put yours wherever you want. I'm going to do mine with my initials. You could certainly do yours with your first name or the date or a symbol or whatever you'd like for your identifying mark to be. And that is going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself some pretty pink shoes, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.